This is A Fit Mess with Zach and Jeremy.
Hello again. Thank you for listening to the show. I'm Jeremy. He's Zach.
What's up, everyone?
And you sound very excited.
I am very excited.
It's got to be hard to do the show in a quiet little conference room all the way on the other side of the country.
It is. It's interesting to do it. It's interesting to find a quiet room to do it.
I bet.
Because I think before we started recording, I think I went to 4 or 5 different rooms and I couldn't find anything.
A lot to talk to you about on this particular episode. Our guest this week, Gretchen Rubin. You know her from the Happiness Project and the 4 Tendencies. She's done tons of research on happiness and has built a nice little career for herself around that. Really fun conversation with her about decluttering. Her new book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, is full of advice on different things you can do to get all of that crap out of your house, out of your garage, out of that storage shed you're spending too much money on, all of that. So we're going to get into all of that with her in just a little bit. I know for me, my house is a mess constantly. I have a 7-year-old, almost an 8-year-old. Actually, by the time this show posts, I have an 8-year-old. And I have a 3-year-old who's almost 4, and there's just toys and clothes and shoes and homework and crafts and dolls and brushes. It's just everywhere. And
I feel like you're describing my house.
Keeping up with that while, trying to cook, trying to do dishes, trying to do our own laundry, like all of it. It can be overwhelming to just have that stuff everywhere. So, like a lot of people around the country, we have been doing the Marie Kondo method of decluttering, where you basically kind of take everything section by section, throw it in huge piles and get rid of it. And it is so liberating. We've had, I don't know how many weekends in a row where I've just had the car jammed with bags full of stuff, where we go to the Goodwill or whatever thrift store and just unload stuff. And man, when you get home and that pile that was sitting there is now out of your house, it's like you physically can breathe easier. It's amazing how much stuff you can accumulate and how much it physically weights you down.
Yeah, I totally get it. For years we've been, this actually isn't my habit. I'm going to throw my wife under the bus here, but she loves to collect big piles of things to be donated to Goodwill and then never take them. Oh, right. So they continue to stay in the house just, in a random pile. But since we are moving soon, we are, we kind of have to go through this. We have no choice. So my wife has been making daily trips to Value Village with things, and it's just been disappearing from the house. Everything's been disappearing, and it really is such a relief. I went back to Seattle for a few days and walked in the house and was like, it just feels lighter in here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's so funny when you do, from what I remember, you guys have a different approach to moving from each other, like my wife and I do. When I move, I just want to box it up and move and deal with it later. She has much more the mindset of, before we move all this crap, let's get rid of a bunch of this crap. Are you guys struggling with that at all? I mean, I know you're already there, so she's kind of on her own for a lot of this. But like you said, you were just here and you got to help a little bit. What's sort of the process for you guys?
Yeah, so it's the size of the move, right? I mean, we're going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and at the end of the day, you pay by the volume, like when you're doing that kind of a move. If it was a local move and we were just moving from one house to another house and doing it all ourselves, I would probably be on the side of, let's just get everything there and we'll figure it out when we get there. But because we're making such a large move, and we're talking about the difference of potentially thousands of dollars if we took everything that we had as opposed to getting rid of half of it, it makes the decision a lot easier. So we're purging beforehand with this one, but it was great. My wife gave me a task list. She's like, you have to go through your closet. I bagged up 3 bags of clothes. I found a wetsuit in the back of my closet that I haven't worn in 10 years, and that went to Goodwill. It was nice.
Yeah, I just went through. So I think I've talked about on the show, I lost a bunch of weight, and a couple months ago I sort of went through my closet and went, none of this stuff fits anymore, got rid of a bunch of it. And so when the time came where Cheryl was like, we're doing this condo method thing, I was like, oh, this will take me 5 minutes. I just did this a month ago. But when you approach it not from a, that just doesn't fit mode, but when you look at something and just go, I wasn't sure about the whole, like, does this thing spark joy? Like I don't know that I operate in that way, but I saw things that were hanging in my closet that I often said, I should wear that, but I don't want to. And so that was sort of the method I went with. It wasn't so much like, oh, I really like this thing. It was just like that thing kind of it's weight in my mind to have these things that I feel like I'm obligated to use, even though I don't want to. And so that was sort of the method I took. And man, I probably got rid of half of the clothes that I had, because so much, like I basically wear the same thing every day, and had all these other things. I had suits that I haven't worn in forever, and they still didn't quite fit, but I could wear them if I needed to. But I was like, I never have an occasion that I need a suit for, and I don't want to wear these because they look dated. They don't look good anymore. So I just got rid of them. Like, if I need a suit, I'll go buy one, but I'm not going to take up space in my closet anymore for these suits that I haven't worn in years. It's so nice now to like sort of look at my closet and go, I am happy to wear any of this today, because this is the stuff that I actually wear without worrying about it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a long time ago, not too long ago, but we talked about it a long time ago, that like, your physical clutter can actually get in the way of your happiness. And I think I read Marie Kondo's book like 4 or 5 years ago, or something like that, maybe 4 years ago. And I spent time trying to figure out how to clear my clutter, because I felt like it was bringing me down, because I'm not very neat and tidy in any way, shape, or form. While I have continued the practice, it's amazing how living clutter-free can actually increase your happiness. I think it's an amazing thing. But in the last 3 or 4 months, I've had to say goodbye to a lot of things that I never really considered giving away or getting rid of. And that's actually been pretty difficult for me. I have to say.
I think one of those things you and I have in common, and we talked about it with our guest, Gretchen Rubin. She has a new book. It is called Outer Order, Inner Calm. And it's all about this. It's all about decluttering. And, maybe you've read Marie Kondo's book, maybe you've seen her show, and you just thought, that's not for me. I can't get on board with that method. I don't understand the spark joy thing. This has a lot of different approaches, a lot of different takes, a lot of different ideas on just even small things, where you can start small with, with a drawer, or, well, why am I telling you? I'll let Gretchen Rubin tell you. We started the conversation really just a couple of days after I'd gotten her book. And as you're about to find out, the book had an immediate impact on me. I got the digital copy yesterday and tore through it. And within probably 3 pages, I looked at my desk because I was reading it at work, and I went, oh my God, this is disgusting. And got out the wipes and just gutted it, just totally cleaned out my desk. And so thank you for helping me have a cleaner work environment.
Well, that's great. And, when I wrote this book, the way that I kind of structured it and presented all the ideas was that it was supposed to be a psych-up book, that somebody would just start reading it and then throw it over their shoulder and just couldn't wait to start clearing clutter. So I'm great that it had that effect on you.
Absolutely. So let's talk about decluttering. Why is it so important? Why should people be doing this right now?
Well, I want to say that there are some people who are truly clutter blind, and for them it's not as important personally, because they just don't see it. It does not drain them. Like, I have a podcast with my sister called Happier with Gretchen Rubin, and my sister is one of these people. She just doesn't see it. She would never close a kitchen cabinet door in her life if she didn't have to live with other people. And but for most of us, it really does contribute to a sense of calm and a sense of focus, and even a sense of possibility. Sometimes when you get rid of these little tasks, you feel much more capable of tackling the big tasks.
There definitely seems to be a push culturally for this to be happening right now. Obviously, Marie Kondo has tapped into something as well with her show. We keep reading stories about thrift stores just being overrun with people donating things. What do you think that show sparked something, or was there something that just sort of needed to be pushed in this direction to open up people's ideas to decluttering?
Well, I do think that there's just this constant, I do think that people recognize that they feel better when they have outer order. And so anything that kind of reminds them of it and how good they're going to feel will inspire them to act. And so I think you're absolutely right that Marie Kondo's show, and then of course her book when it came out several years ago, was something that got people focused on it and fired up. And I think there's some things that are going on right now that make it particularly resonant with people. One is that people feel very overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world and everything going on generally, that people feel overwhelmed and kind of overstimulated. And I think there is a feeling, I can't control the world, but I can control my coat closet. And that you're trying to get yourself to a calmer, more focused place. And one way to do that is to eliminate the visual noise and annoyances that come from just having your system clogged up with junk. And then I also think there's kind of a demographic moment because there's a lot of people who are in the season of stuff with children, but there's also a lot of stuff kind of coming down from older generations. And this has been an issue. There's been all these articles about like people today don't want brown furniture. They don't want giant sets of china. And so there's a lot of managing of, okay, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I don't have room for it. I don't want it. And yet it's coming to me. And so I have to deal with it.
So one of the things that I've always struggled with is I guess I don't mind the clutter when I don't have anything to do, but when I've got something important that I have to do and I want to procrastinate it, all of a sudden the clutter all around me gets so much more important and I work on cleaning it up. And if that clutter wasn't there, I wouldn't have that. I'm sure I'd find something else to procrastinate with, but how do you get yourself, if you're not used to taking care of the clutter, how do you make that mind shift into just putting things away and keeping things tidy?
Well, you're talking about procrastinating. And procrastinating is indeed a popular method of procrastination, which is when something that never bothered you before now feels like an urgent task that must be completed before you can sit down to do something else.
Yep.
So I think you have to recognize it for what it is. It's not true clutter clearing. It's procrastination. There is helpful preparation where I think, if you're sitting down to your desk to do an important task, there is putting things away, getting rid of trash, putting dirty dishes away, putting pens and pen cups, all that stuff, within reason can help you get focused and get ready. But that's helpful preparation. Whereas procrastinating is often things like, I need to deal with this entire bookshelf, and maybe I need to alphabetize it, or maybe I'll arrange the books by color, that kind of thing, where it's not related to the task. It's just sort of like a general feeling of uneasiness. But you only feel it because you want a reason not to be working on something else.
Does clutter, though, does it come from a deeper place of, is there something psychological going on? Are we just living too fast-paced lives? Are we just lazy? Like, what leads people to end up surrounded by piles of things that they don't need?
I think a big part of it is decision fatigue. It's hard to make decisions, and it's a lot easier just to keep something, to just shove it in a drawer than it is to decide, do I want it? Do I want to give it away? Is it worth it to give it away? Does anybody want this thing? If I do give it away, where do I give it away? Do I recycle it? Do I throw it away? So sometimes it's like, okay, I have all these clothes that my child has outgrown. It's just easier to put them all in the attic than it is to sort through them and decide what to do with them. So I just keep them all. But at some point, you have to deal with it. And then sometimes our possessions give us bad feelings that we're trying to avoid. So maybe I spent too much on a pair of pants and I never wear them. So every time I see them, I feel guilty. But if I give them away, then I'm really acknowledging that I spent money on something that I never wore. Or maybe I have a project that I never finished, like a 1,000-piece puzzle. Well, now I don't want to even finish it, but I just leave it out because I feel like, well, I should finish it. And again, if I just gave it away, I would feel like I made a mistake. But abandoning a project is the quickest and easiest way to finish a project. Or we have things related to a fantasy self, where it's something. It's an idea that we wish were true about ourselves. Like I'm going to teach myself to play guitar. So I have a guitar, but I never do teach myself. Can
I just jump in right there? I literally last week I had an electric guitar that I think I've had for 20 years, that I know the same 4 chords today that I knew the day I bought that thing. And it was one of many things that I looked at all the time and went, I really, I got to set some time aside to do that. And I've been saying that to myself for 20 years. And I finally just went, enough. And I just picked it up, took it to the guitar store, sold it to him. And it still hurts. Like, I still am like, maybe if I go in there, I can buy it back. Maybe I can still get it. But I know I'm never going to do. And P.S. I've got 2 other guitars, so not that big of a deal. But when I read that in your book, I just went, oh my God, this is me. Because we're going through this at my house right now. We just took like 20 bags of clothes to the thrift store, like just unloading tons of stuff. My kids finally took their like 400 plastic cups and went, we don't need these. We have like these 5 cool ones that we like. So it just so much of what you're talking about in this book really just is resonating with me right now. But the guitar one, I was like, that is too weird that it's just spot on the exact dream that I had to let go of to make space for other things in my life.
But that's exactly right, because now that you're not beating yourself up for not playing guitar, you can have more time to do the things you actually like to do and more space for them. And you always want to have that nagging feeling every time you look at it, like, ooh, when am I going to make time for that? It's very freeing just to get rid of all that stuff that is sort of just tugging at the corners of your mind all the time. I think that's why people find clutter so draining, and then why they get the giant boost when they clear it out. Because over and over, people are like, they just feel so good, it doesn't really make sense. It's like, why just getting rid of an electric? Like, on the one hand, it makes you feel sort of sad and wistful. But then on the other hand, don't you feel great every time you pass by the place in your house where you used to see it and it's gone? It's just like, it feels like a relief.
It's that. And when I handed it over to the guy at the shop and he plugged it in to test it and he actually knew what he was doing, I was like, that's great that somebody is going to make that thing sound the way it was intended to, because I couldn't do it. So that felt good.
No, I think for a lot of people it's very comforting to remember you're not making good use of it, but if you put it out into the world, somebody else could get great use out of it. And so in a way, it's wasteful to just keep it like, gathering dust on a shelf when it could be out in the world, doing its little job, very well.
One of the things that surprised me about going through something like this was, the pain and discomfort of making the decision of getting rid of something. But then once it was gone, like you mentioned just a minute ago, the freedom that you feel from it, it was really quick that freedom came to me and I felt better about it. And I was actually very surprised at how quickly I felt better about it, even though while I was making the decision, it was very painful. Is that abnormal, or have you seen that to be the norm when people make that decision to give away something, that the freedom just quickly hits them?
Well, one thing that surprises people is really truly how rare it is for somebody to regret it. People often worry about regretting it. It's very rare. I mean, I'm not saying it never happens, but it's rare that somebody gets rid of something where they truly feel like they made a mistake. Just about there's something called the endowment effect, which is a psychological phenomenon where we endow the things that we own with more meaning. And so we have sort of our default is to hang on to things. So, when in doubt, you're probably erring on the side of keeping things, even though when in doubt, throw it out or recycle it or give it away is a good rule. I think people underestimate how much pleasure they will get from it, and they might overestimate the likelihood of bad feelings of getting rid of it. The one thing I would say is that a lot of experts really argue against keeping like old journals and things like that. To me, the riskiest thing to get rid of is something that can never be replaced, like a journal. I would always say, like, the electric guitar, if you decided you just passionately wanted an electric guitar, you could get another one, but you can't get your high school journals back. So those are the things where I would say, if you're not sure, really give yourself a little time to think about it. Because sometimes people get this thing, which I call frenzy of the clear, which is they get so worked up with how good it feels to get rid of everything, they just start kind of throwing away everything. Yep. It's kind of funny. And in that case, you sort of want to say, like, hang on, stay mindful here. Let's really use decision-making and think about what you want. And with something that is irreplaceable, it's one thing your college notes where it's like, okay, are you really going to read your chem notes from, sophomore year of college? Maybe not. Right. But a journal or something, or like letters from an ex-boyfriend. I'm like, Really think that over. I'm not saying you wouldn't necessarily get rid of them, because you might, but they're of a different class in my mind.
Well, in your book, you have basically sort of 5 stages that help someone sort of go through that process and make those good decisions. Can you talk a little bit about those 5 stages?
Well, but the thing about the 5 stages is you don't have to do it in that order, because sometimes people just want to jump in, and I'm just like, whatever, like, don't stop yourself. Don't think you have to do something in any particular order, because whatever works for you is the right thing. But there is a logical way to think about it. And the first is to make choices, because the first thing we should do is to decide what to keep and what to relinquish. And that is really a helpful place to start, because everything else is easier if you just have less stuff to manage, you know. The next one is to create order. And of course, it's easier to create order if you've made the decision to get rid of something, to get rid of it. Like, my sister had tons and tons of paperwork, and she was very concerned about how to organize it. But then when she realized she didn't need to keep any of it, well, then her work was done. She didn't have to organize it. She didn't have to create any paper order, because she didn't have any papers left. Another one is to know yourself. And this is something that kind of comes up throughout, which is really, people are very different in the kind of challenges they face, the kind of clutter they acquire, their values, the kind of habits that they are attracted to. So you really want to know yourself. And people want to get to different places too. Like, there are abundance lovers and simplicity lovers. And simplicity lovers really, they like bare shelves and empty counters and not a lot going on. So they really might want to get rid of a lot of things, you know, be minimalist. And then abundance lovers like profusion and choice and collections and stuff. And, you know, they don't want a capsule wardrobe. That's because they love abundance. And it's not that one person's right and one person's wrong, but when you see how people are approaching things differently, it can help you understand why people are doing things that maybe don't make sense to you. Or another one is to know, are you an underbuyer or overbuyer? Some people buy too much. Some people buy too little and never get rid of anything because they hate to buy. So again, it's like, what kind of stuff is your problem? And then it's easier to fix it. Another one is to have helpful habits, because what we do every day matters more than what we do once in a while. So it's more helpful to like create and maintain order in kind of small ways that can just be part of your everyday life, rather than, spring cleaning, or, every 6 months we're going to do some huge project. Well, that's very easy to postpone. For a lot of people, they don't have the time and the energy to do that. So if you have these little habits, that can just make your life easier, more orderly, more serene as you go, which I think for busy people is very attractive. And then the final thing is to think about how to make your environment more beautiful, because the whole point of this is to really feel good in your surroundings. And so part of it is, are there little ways that don't add to outer order, but that might make you feel like your space is more pleasant, whether that's at work or at home, in your car? What are some of the things that you can do to just elevate your surroundings? So those are the 5 stages.
So in that, you mentioned how it's basically going to be a little different for everybody. How do you're famous now for the 4 tendencies. How do the 4 tendencies play into the kinds of people that are dealing with this from different aspects, I guess, or different points of view?
Right. So I'm going to explain these. Now, there is a quiz on my site at GretchenRubin.com/quiz. If anybody wants to take a quiz that will tell them what they are. And 2 million people have taken this free quiz. But you can often just tell what you are from this description. So it's whether you're an upholder, a questioner, an obliger, or a rebel. And this has to do with how people either meet or resist expectations. Outer expectations, like a work deadline or a request from a friend, or inner expectations, like your own desire to keep a New Year's resolution, your own desire to teach yourself to play electric guitar. So upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. They keep the work deadline. They keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. They want to know what other people expect from them, but their expectations for themselves are just as important. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. They resist anything arbitrary, ineffective, or unjustified. So they're making everything an inner expectation. If it meets their inner standard, they'll meet that expectation. If it fails it, they will push back. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. Like a friend who said, I don't understand it. When I was in high school, I was on the track team, and I never missed track practice, so why can't I go running now? Well, when she had a team and a coach expecting her to show up, no problem. But when she's trying to go on her own, she struggles. And then there are rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they're very likely to resist. And they typically don't like to tell themselves what to do. Like they won't sign up for a weekend spin class because they don't know what they're going to want to do on the weekend. And you're absolutely right. The 4 tendencies absolutely come into play with creating outer order and often explain the kind of conflicts that arise among people when they're trying to deal with outer order together, because they're coming from different places.
So I've read your book, and I've identified myself as an obliger, but also a questioner as well. And I think I question first, and then I oblige if it makes sense. But I do have a lot of trouble holding myself accountable, right? I need that external motivation to get things done. So for someone who's an obliger, what would you say someone who's an obliger could do to help clear the clutter, right? How do we get those expectations in place and make ourselves do it?
Well, that's a great place to start because obliger is the biggest tendency for both men and women. So you either are an obliger or you have many obligers in your life. So anytime we're trying to figure out how, they're the big ones. And as you say, the key thing for obligers to remember, or if you're dealing with an obliger, is to meet inner expectations. Obligers must have outer accountability. I cannot emphasize this enough. They need outer accountability. So thinking about things like priorities or self-care or making time for yourself or motivation, it doesn't work for obligers. What they need is outer accountability. And it's very easy to do this. If you want to clear clutter, so you might think, the guest room, so I'll invite somebody to come stay for the weekend. Now you got to clean out the guest room. You could throw a party. You could think about your duty to other people in your household. Other people in this household are going to find it much easier to stay focused, put things away. I want to model good behavior for them because I want them to learn to have outer order, and so I need to do this for them. You can think about your future self. If I come to the end of this year and I have done nothing about this horrible situation in the basement, I am going to be so disappointed in myself. I have to do it. You could hire a professional organizer. I mean, a lot of times it's great to hire someone who's a professional accountability partner because they know how to hold you accountable, and the mere fact that you've paid will help keep you accountable. And, they can give you expert advice. Or even if you can't pay for a professional organizer, just make a date with a friend. I am kind of a happiness bully. That's what my sister calls me. And I beg my friends to let me come over and help them clean their clutter because I love to do it. And for a lot of people, I realize I'm useful just by making the date and coming over. I don't even, maybe I hold a garbage bag open, but I don't even really do that much. But they just need me to be there to be like, this is what's happening now, and I can't just wander off and start, flicking through the channels on the television set because Gretchen's here for us to clear clutter. And so just having someone present is a good source of accountability. So there's a million ways to have accountability once you realize that that's what you need, and that is what an obliger needs.
Hey, I've got some time this weekend. I don't know if you're busy, but feel free to come on over.
Yeah,
I got plenty to
come.
do.
I love to do it. Love to do it. Yeah, it's my favorite thing.
You mentioned being a role model, and obviously kids play a big part in clutter, at least in my house, and I'm assuming Zach's as well.
Mine too.
How do we get kids on board with this?
Well, one thing to do is to realize that you are in this season of stuff, and it's just a period in your life where there is just stuff everywhere, and try to just kind of accept it for what it is and to enjoy the season of life. I think it's very hard to maintain the kind of order that many people prefer when there are little kids in the house, or even medium-sized kids in the house. But the day will come and they will move out with their clutter, and then you will be nostalgic for all the Legos that were once on the floor. So enjoy it while it lasts. I think for children, a lot of times they need help managing things. Like I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, oh, my daughter, she's got 70 stuffed animals, but she just plays with the same two, but they're everywhere. I'm like, how do you expect a 4-year-old child to figure out what to do with 70 stuffed animals? That's on you. Like part of it is we need to help them manage it. And it's hard because especially if you have like loving grandparents and aunts and uncles and birthday parties, it can seem like, it's not like you're buying this stuff for them. It's just coming in these huge waves. And how do you manage it? So part of it is finding places where you can donate it. It's great if there's a child that who can use it or wants it. I've done things like when my daughter went to a summer camp, we were driving her up there, and I called the director and said, we have so many board games and puzzles. Would you like them? And then they were thrilled because, what do you do on a rainy afternoon if you're at summer camp? It's like they go into this big barn and play board games and puzzles. And, of course, these things, they don't last long under those conditions. So they were absolutely thrilled. I mean, we had that car jam-packed. And it made me so happy to think that lots of kids would be playing with these things instead of them just gathering dust on our shelves. And often children are very ready for this. They understand, you have a lot of toys. Other children don't have many toys. Why don't we give it? They often they're very interested in that. And also children often want to be old. They don't want to be little. They've outgrown things. So the idea, you don't really play with My Little Ponies anymore. Do you still want them? Or is that more something that you liked when you were little? A lot of times somebody yeah, I don't like those anymore. So maybe you keep one My Little Pony for memento's sake. But then the rest of them can go. It is hard, though, because you got to manage the clothes, the boots. If you've got children of multiple ages, it's what do you keep to use as a hand-me-down? How do you find it when the child's the right size? It's a whole process. But the more you weed out as you go, the happier you are. I mean, I am not perfect at this. There's many times where I've opened up a box of stuff for my younger daughter, and I'm like, why did I even keep this? I hauled this around and stored it and bought a plastic box to put it in. And I'm just telling you right now that no one's wearing that thing again. I could have gotten rid of that 5 years ago.
So my daughter is 7, and it's interesting trying to go through some of these exercises with her because she is a total rebel. It's just my wife and I we devise strategies of, here's the option we'd like her to take. So we need to figure out 2 other options that she can rebel against to go down that route. I just wanted to comment that I was smiling the whole time that you were saying that because with my daughter, it's very difficult to get any of that stuff done because I say, well, you don't play with My Little Ponies anymore, so let's get rid of these. And her immediate reaction is, well, yes, I do. I'm going to. And now that you say I don't, I'm going the other way.
Well, you set that up, right?
Yep.
Because you said to her, you set up something for her to argue with.
Yep.
So what I would say, things that you could try is to appeal to her identity. Is she an orderly child or is she a messy child?
She's fairly messy.
Is she fairly messy? Does she want to be orderly or is she orderly in any way?
She is orderly in many ways. I think where she really lacks is just putting things back when she's done with them. So over time, things just build up.
Because you could try to tap into an identity of she's the responsible one, or not many 7-year-olds could do what she did, what she can do. You've seen her when you put your mind to it, I know that you can do it. Do you want this space? A lot of times for a rebel, it's well, I want this. It's oh, but I know you always like to do, you like to spread out and have everything out. I'm surprised that you don't put everything away just to get it out of your way because I know how you like to have room. To think about, well, why would she want that? Why would that be what she would choose?
Right.
Because if you're constantly setting up consequences, that feels like control because it is. That's what it is. And they don't want to be controlled. And so even a 4-year-old rebel will see through that very quickly. Sometimes it can work, but if you set it up that way, it can get pretty hard to manage. But the more you can say, this is what you want, and don't save, don't rescue. So if she's got a friend coming over, it's let it be embarrassing. It's oh yeah, I guess it was kind of a bummer because you guys didn't have any room to play. That's what happens when you don't put things away.
Yep.
I mean, all the rebels that I know who are adults say that negative consequences are really, really important. But it can be hard. It's so hard as a parent to let your child experience negative consequences. It's really, really, really hard. But it really works because that's not what you want. If every time you turn around, somebody runs into your room and picks it up, it's that works for you. That's perfectly acceptable.
So we've talked about decluttering and the 4 tendencies and now kids. Is there a way to identify which of the 4 tendencies your kids fall into so that you can manipulate them and control them better?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's very obvious. Like, it sounds like, rebels are pretty obvious, I think, right?
Right.
It sounds like your daughter was pretty clear. Yeah, upholders are pretty obvious. Sometimes questioners are very obvious. Sometimes obligers. Like, for children, it's not always easy to tell because they're not autonomous in the way that adults are. It's often very easy to tell. My younger daughter is an upholder, and I think I'm probably particularly attuned to it because I'm an upholder, but she was an upholder from, like, the time she was 5. And it's funny, like, as an upholder, like, I really understand how to talk to her in a way that I think people who are not upholders, like, they don't understand her perspective. And I've heard this from many people who are rebels. Like, they're like, I don't understand how someone who's not a rebel is the parent of a rebel child because it's really, really hard because the other tendency is to see the world in a different way. It's really challenging. So I think you want to, and I keep thinking that I should write a test for children, but it's very hard because it's like children, the difference between a 6-year-old and a 16-year-old is so vast. It would be very difficult to do. But a lot of times it's the same things. It's like, is it a kid who won't do something unless they understand why? It's one thing to be like, why is the sky blue? Why is this water cold? That's like the way little kids ask why. But if it's more like, well, why should I? Like, what is the reason for this? That's a sign of questioner. And upholder is the child when you're telling yourself, I'm such a great parent. Because I just say, hey, do this, and the kid like marches off and does it for the next 3 years. I never have to remind my child to feed the fish. It's like, okay, I don't think that's something that you're doing. I think that's just what you got in the great handout. There's so much power and so much to admire about all the tendencies, though. It makes me sad sometimes when people say, like, one's better than another one, because they're all terrific, but they all have their downsides, too. And so you have to figure out, and as you say, when you can speak someone's language, like I've learned this with my husband, I can't say to him something like, what's your work address? Because he'll say, what do you want to know? He won't do the simplest thing. Unless he understands why. So I have to say, like, oh, I'm filling out a form. What's your work address?
Oh, that's fun.
Or like, instead of saying, like, what time are we leaving to go to XYZ place, I have to say, I'm wondering if I have time to go to the gym. What time are we leaving for XYZ place? Because he'll tell me if he understands why, but he won't do anything if he doesn't understand why. So here it comes up in clutter clearing. I say to you, we need to clean out the basement this weekend. And a questioner's like, why? This weekend is an arbitrary date. Why should we clean out the basement at all? We never use it. I don't understand. I just like literally have no concept like why I would spend 1 second of my day doing this. So you have to say, hey, I don't know if you know, but they're going to come work on the furnace next week. And so I'm thinking that we should go down and clean out the basement this weekend so they can easily do their work. And so we pay half price because otherwise they're going to spend all this time just moving our stuff around. And that's going to mean that we're paying more in the end for the number of hours that it's going to take them to do the job. Okay. It's not arbitrary. I understand why. I understand why I'm doing it now. I understand why this is like going to save me money. Like, I'm on board with that.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
But if you just say, like, why don't you ever do anything I ask you to do? Why is everything an argument? It's like, well, that's not going to make me comply. But so speak to a questioner. A lot of times questioners like, I don't understand why I should make my bed. I just unmake it every night. I'm like, okay, fine. Don't make it then. If it just feels like a big waste of time, there's no magic to making your bed. For some people, it makes them feel happier or calmer. A lot of people feel that way. But if it just bugs you, the idea that you just be wasting your time, then don't do it. Very questioner.
So in our closing minutes with you, you have tons and tons of really just practical tips to sort of get started. Are there 2 or 3 that you could quickly point out and say, here's just, if you're just looking at this giant mountain and going, how do I climb this thing?
Yeah.
What's the first step or 2 that they can take?
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing I would say is a lot of people start by thinking, I need to get organized. Don't get organized. What you need to do is start by elimination. So get rid of everything you don't use, need, or love, and you may find that you don't need to organize it at all. So do not head out to the store for sure. Like the people who want to buy the complicated hangers and the crazy sets of containers, it's like, wait. You may not need that stuff at all. A rule that many, many people find helpful is the 1-minute rule. Anything you can do in less than a minute, you do without delay. That just gets rid of a lot of little tasks. One thing that works for a lot of people is to store it at the store. Some people have a kind of clutter related to anticipation. Like, I'm going to buy this birthday gift, even though I don't know anybody who's having a birthday, because it could come in handy. Or I'm going to buy this ice scraper for the windshield, because it seems like one day it could be useful to have a wind scraper, an ice scraper. It's like, well, maybe you should wait and see if the need ever arises. You can just store it at the store, and then if you need it, you can go get it. You'll know if you need that. Because sometimes people accumulate things, and then they have to manage them and find them when they need them, and it's just a bunch of work for things that it's not clear that they even really need. One thing that a lot of people like for clothes is the X factor. If you ran into your ex on the street wearing that particular item, would you be glad or would you be sad? And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I would not want to be caught wearing that baggy sweatshirt with a big hole in it if I ran into my ex, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to retire the giant sweatshirt.
That's funny. The store at the store thing that hits home for me too, because a lot of times the advice that I try and give my family and my friends when asked is I just try and think of, if the room where that is a storage unit, how much are you paying, per whatever square feet to store it, so that one day you don't have to buy it again? Like, how much are you going to spend in the next 10 years storing that thing in that room, where you could literally go walk in the store and for probably a fraction of the price just buy it again? So that totally.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one lesson from this is that I should immediately invest in self-storage, because that is the best business I've ever heard of in my life. It's just astronomical how much self-storage in the United States is happening, and what people are paying every year, and most of them never go get it at all. Don't even know what's in there. And as you say, the things they could have saved so much money by not storing it. They could have bought it all new for the price that you're saving that old Monopoly set. You could have bought a new Monopoly set when you actually wanted it, which might never be.
Right.
So yeah, that's one thing. I have a friend who has self-storage units in 4 states.
Oh my God!
I feel like Voldemort with the soul splitting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even contemplate having that. And it's just terrible, And it's the classic thing where she inherited all this stuff and doesn't have room for it. So where's it going to go? But so rather than make the hard choice in the moment of what am I going to do with my aunt's stuff? It's beautiful, but I don't want it. I don't have room for it.
Yeah.
She just stored it,
man.
And now she's paying for it.
That's
for
crazy.
I don't know how long. I mean, shockingly long.
That's amazing. Gretchen Rubin, thank you so much for this time. It was a lot of fun to talk to you, and a lot of really great advice. And the book is available now, correct?
Yes, it is. Outer Order, Inner Calm.
All right, that is Gretchen Rubin. Her new book, Outer Order, Inner Calm. Get it now. There's a link on our website to get a copy for yourself. As you can tell, tons of great advice in there on how to get rid of things. It's funny, though, the guitar conversation, how ironic it was that came up in the book, and how I had just gone through that. Just today, I was walking by, I don't even remember what it was. There was some magazine or something that was on the ground, and it was some reference to music, and it reminded me that I just gave up that guitar, and it's still bugging me. I still can't let go of the fact that I let go of that guitar, even though I will never play it. Even if it was still in my house, I will never play that thing, just because it hasn't been a priority for 40 years, and it's not going to be one now. But it's just it's amazing how that, of all the stuff I've gotten rid of, that thing's still bugging me.
Yeah, what's even more ironic is that I actually just got rid of my guitar about 2 months ago. I had a cheap electric guitar, and I've always wanted to learn how to play. I mean, for 20 plus years, I've wanted to learn how to play, but I've always had something to practice on, but I've never practiced. And I finally gave up the dream, and I gave it away about 2 months ago, and it definitely is not bothering. Once I actually decided I'm not going to learn how to play guitar, I'm going to give this away. It's not taking up space. It was so freeing for me, and I don't regret that one in any way, shape, or form. But that's one of those items, like she talked about, if I ever get the bug to want to learn guitar again, I can go buy one. I mean, they're relatively cheap. But yeah, that is kind of funny that she mentioned guitar. You gave yours away. I gave mine away. It's just everyone's giving guitars away.
We're giving one away on the show. No, we're not.
No.
They're already gone. So yeah, Outer Order, Inner Calm is the name of the book. Get your copy now. And she also has her own podcast, Happier with Gretchen Rubin. So check that out. It's a great show. It's funny. When we first started doing this show a few months ago, Zach, my cousin who lives in Colorado was very interested. I sent her the link to what we were working on, and she was like, "Have you ever heard of Gretchen Rubin?" And the name didn't ring a bell, but I did once I looked her up. I remembered reading The Happiness Project years ago. But she was a big advocate for, you guys have to talk to her. She would be great for the show. And I was like, I don't know. She's probably too big for us. And here we are. We made it happen. So that was exciting.
Yeah, that's definitely exciting. It was a good conversation with her. I'm super happy that she took the time to talk to us.
Yes. I see what you did.
Sorry,
there.
I had to make that play.
I see what you did there. Well, that was a challenge that we overcame. Let's talk about other challenges.
Let the challenge begin.
All right. So when we last got together, we discussed Shaun T's workout, Transform 20.
Yes.
And we challenged each other to just see the program through, correct? Is that where we left things with that one?
That's where we left it. To just run through the program.
I am, tomorrow, I will wrap up week 2 of the commit phase, the 2-week phase of a 20-minute workout every day for 6 of 7 days. I'm wrapping up the commit phase tomorrow.
Awesome. Good for you.
And let me just say, by the way, yesterday, now that daylight saving time is here, the afternoons are longer, they're sunnier. I got to finally ride my bike. This is normally how I prefer to get to work, is by bike commuting. Finally did that yesterday, rode in, and was surprised that I wasn't totally exhausted by it because I hadn't done it in months. And I knew I still had to get my workout in. So I went straight to the gym from my bike, did the workout, and was definitely tired. Like it took a lot out of me. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, I did it. Good for me. Way to go. And it was like 2 hours later when I realized, oh, shit, I still have to ride home. So I bet you made it. Yeah, I did. I was dead tired when I got home, and I took a little nap in the hot tub and felt a lot better. But otherwise,
nice.
Oh,
how do you feel today?
Oh, I'm drained. That was the other thing. I thought, I worked out 3 times yesterday. When I go to do my Friday workout, it's gonna feel like a piece of cake. But man, it was like my legs were made of lead.
I'm sure.
I was struggling.
You get your break day coming up pretty soon, right?
Oh, yeah, I can't wait. Awesome. How are you doing with it?
Good. I'm on week 3. The program is Monday through Saturday, but just because I have more access to facilities where I can work out on the weekends, I'm doing it a little bit off, but I'm doing good. I think I talked about it in one of our previous shows, but I don't have, the apartment that I'm in is super tiny. It's on the 3rd floor. I can't jump. I can't.
Oh, yeah.
I really can't do anything in there. And then the time that I prefer to work out is, around 5:30 when, all the gyms are packed and there's no free room.
Yeah.
So I really can't go to a gym. So I was struggling with that at the beginning, but what I've come to find out is that there's nobody at work, and I just keep booking one of the big conference rooms, and I'm working out here at work. Nobody bothers me. There's showers. It's absolutely awesome.
That is awesome. But you posted that picture of the conference room where you're working out, and it's just so sad to see these empty chairs in this room. It's it'd be great if you could get some of your coworkers to go in with you and do it as a team.
Well, they hold yoga classes here in that room as well during lunch, and we did that today. And one of the girls we were just chatting before class, and she was like, where do you work out? Where do you go? And I was like, actually, right here in this room. And she's like, what? I was like, yeah, I throw up, a workout on my laptop or up on the projector, and I just work out in here. And she's like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll join you sometime.
Nice.
So maybe we'll get a little following and just have a group of people who work out after work.
Nice. You're making friends. How sweet.
Yeah. But I will say, in the picture I posted on Facebook and Instagram, it was my most productive meeting all week.
Yeah, I bet.
In there. But it was Transform 20, and I do have to, since you worked out really hard yesterday, I do have to tell you, that, I did my Transform 20 and I just, it wasn't enough for me yesterday. So I actually fired up an episode of Insanity Max 30 and did one of those too.
Oh my God.
And
you're a
by the end
maniac.
of that, I was done.
You're a maniac.
I might try it again tonight.
There you
We'll
go.
see.
Speaking of that episode, we actually talked to Shanti on our last episode. So if you are finding us for the first time because of your interest in Gretchen Rubin and you want to hear that interview with Shanti, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you are getting this, and you can get a hold of that episode. All right, so that's the last week's challenge. Now we have a new challenge. And based on the conversation that we've been having throughout this episode, we're going to continue to work on our decluttering. So, Zach, I'm going to challenge you and myself to find one thing that you've been hanging on to for too long, that you're not going to use, that you keep telling yourself you're going to use, or you're going to find some way to make it a part of your life. You're just not gonna. Get rid of it.
Yeah, and I think I accept that challenge, but I want to emphasize I really want to see if I can find something that I've literally picked up, a dozen times and said, I should get rid of this, but I'm going to keep it anyway.
Yep.
Something that's just, been with me for years and years and years and years and just won't make me any more happier.
Yep.
So I accept that challenge, and I've got a couple of things in mind. I'll fill you in next time.
Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas, but nothing I can commit to yet. But yeah, we'll follow up on that on the next show. Before we get out of here, a couple of business notes to tell you about. We want to thank our sponsor, Bravest Brewing, some amazing non-alcoholic beers that you can get sent to your house through the mail if you're into such things. Go to our website. We have a link to their website, and you can use our promo code FITMESS10. Get 10% off your order. The ambers and the IPAs and the stouts that those guys make are incredible, and they are non-alcoholic, so you can drink them guilt-free. And
you can drink them guilt-free while you're decluttering your house. That's what I would be doing.
Exactly. So there's that. Also, we are always talking about trying to be open to your feedback. We have a new way for you to do that. You can call our voicemail line. That number is 206-659-7667. You can rewind that, or I'll tell you again, 206-659-7667. If you have questions, you want to share your successes, share your failures, have feedback, whatever it is, call anytime, leave a message there. We'll play it on the show, unless it's terrible, but it won't be. Call anytime. We would love to hear your feedback through that, and to be able to use it on the show would be a lot of fun. And I believe that's all we've got for you this time. Thanks so much for all the ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Facebook and Twitter and all the interactions that we get there. We hope you'll follow us there and help spread the word about our little show so we can help reach more people and possibly help them find ways to improve their lives as well. Thanks so much for listening. Zach, anything to add before we go?
No, I don't have anything. I actually have to get back to work.
Me too. All right, we're out of here. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right.
thefitmess.com. Thanks.
See ya.